Hello, welcome to Rods and Menagerie. Today I am going to be doing an oil change in a 2015 RAV4. For the oil change I need to get, of course, oil, and this vehicle takes 0W20 and it needs about 5 quarts, so I bought 5 quarts. Need a funnel, filter, got an oil catch pan, towels, some really wonderful homemade ramps. That tool is to take off the oil filter, and then some sockets. Got the car up on the ramps so that I can get a little more clearance underneath to do the oil change, and I always recommend put on the parking brake when you're going to be underneath it. When these things fall, they don't bounce. First thing I do is I take off the oil cap to let air in while I'm draining it. Just set that aside. Under the vehicle, this is the oil pan. It's right here in the middle between the tires, and this is the nut to take off for drainage, and this is actually the oil filter. So you take that off, and at some point she ran over paint, but hey. This is a 13mm socket. Well, that came loose easy. Got the oil bin ready to catch. And there we go. While that is draining, I like to go ahead and take this thing off. So this attaches here. And socket goes here, and pop it loose. One thing I need to do is when this thing comes off, a lot of oil is going to come out with it, so I need to slide this thing to where it catches both. And tighten now. It's coming off. And then a big bunch of oil. There we go. Let it drain a little bit. It's down to a trickle now, but I just leave it draining while I'm actually working on the filter. Just get every little bit out. This is the filter and the housing. I'm going to clean it off with a towel. This is what the new filter looks like. And this is the old. Definitely time for a new one. There's a rubber gasket to replace too. And you can't really see it, but it is right there, just very black. You see how I'm pushing it up? I need to take that off. And the new one just goes right back on, just like the old one came off. It goes back down into that groove. Like so. New filter goes in. And I'm ready to put it back on. And it goes back up in there. Now it's time for the socket. Not want to come off, so I'm going to give it some love taps with a hammer. We have a winner. Now I need to put the plug back in. Hand tight. Now for the socket. This is what I keep my oil in, and once I get it about 3/4 of the way full, I'll take it into a place like AutoZone and recycle it. Now to pour the oil back in using the funnel. I like using synthetic in all my oil changes just because I feel it lasts longer. STP don't really care. The only thing I like about this bottle is the handle style. It makes it easier to pour. Other than that, I'm happy with any synthetic. This is the engine oil dipstick. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out, as it'll usually have some residual oil still on it, see, like that. And I want to go ahead and clean it off. I actually will leave it out while I'm filling, because I don't want to have a splattering oil getting on it and throwing off my reading. But if you look at the dipstick, it's got two little dots here and then the other one at the end. The oil needs to be between those two dots when you filled it, and this is the full, and that's near empty down there. So I typically like to get it about 3/4 of the way, so about right here. One thing you want to do when you do an oil change is you want to have the vehicle as level as possible, and so my driveway is actually slightly sloped, but the ramps actually help level it out a little bit. But I'm still probably at a 10, maybe a 10-degree angle. So one thing you have to keep in mind is that will throw off your reading on the dipstick. Let the pouring begin. Do it in small stages so you don't overfill the funnel and minimize the chance of making a mess. I will typically put in about 3 quarts and then start slowing down so I can gauge how much is in the engine. One thing I like to do is, after I've filled it to a degree, I want to go ahead and just wait and give the oil a chance to settle inside the engine, to say as much of the oil that's in the engine down to the pan. And then I will take the dipstick and put it back. Try and do this one-handed is fun. But then you just always want to make sure you push it in as far as it'll go. That way you get a more accurate reading, and then pull it out. And there's mine. Mine is reading about here, about halfway. So I'm going to add a little bit more. One note about filling oil: it's better to stop after the 3.5 quarts and then have to keep refilling it and adding 2-3 different times, maybe 5 times to get to where you want it. Because if you try to get exact and then you overfill it, you got to go back through the process and drain some out of the bottom. It's a pain. You don't want to overfill it, because that can actually add pressure inside your engine and can blow gaskets. Not good. Adding just a little bit more. Let that settle for a second. Okay, it's been about a minute, so let's retest. Now I am up to about here, and that's a 3/4 mark I like to be at, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. So this goes back in, leave it, take your funnel out. Cannot stress enough, always remember to put your cap back on. I have seen people leave their cap off. I have seen oil change places leave their cap off, and what that does is when you drive around without that cap on, the oil gets thrown all over the inside of your engine bay, and it's a complete mess, and it can actually burn up your engine if you run it without the oil inside for too long. Now I need to get the maintenance light off, which is right here, which is in the RAV4 and many other vehicles. Let you know you need an oil change and maybe other things, but in this case it's the oil change. I need to get it over to trip A, which it's not in one at all right now. And you hit this display button, and that toggles it to trip A. Then you turn off the vehicle, put the key back in. You have to hold down the display button at the same time you're turning the vehicle to the on position, not starting it, but actually just turning it to where all the electronics come on. See, it has the flashing lights. 2, 1, blink zeros, and the maintenance light's gone. Another thing I like to do is I toggle it over to trip B, and I accidentally filmed it off camera, but I like to toggle it over to trip B, hold down the display button so that the trip zeroes out, and then I use that as my oil change number so that I know how many miles has been driven since my last oil change. And then once the trip B is zeroed out, then you just toggle it on through to get back to your odometer, and we're done. Well, that is an oil change in a Toyota RAV4. Oil changes are actually very similar in most vehicles. Just the maintenance required light is not present in all of them, like my truck does not have one. But it's basically it. It's just you drain the oil, refill the oil, change out the filter, and put in a new one. There's actually an air filter that is recommended to be changed periodically, but I do mine every 2 or 3 oil changes, and it was not time for that in this one, so I did not do it on this particular one. But thanks for watching.